Welcome to the spoiler review of Deadpool and Wolverine movie, the most anticipated movie of the year 2024. What does it do for us? How does it benefit the superhero fandom? Today, I'm joined by my most esteemed community member, whom many of you have seen in the previous trailer reviews as well as some of my live broadcasts. Please welcome Son of Sparda, aka Jamil Baksh. For those of you who are seeing him for the very first time, he is one of Jeddah's formidable collectors when it comes to collecting superhero memorabilia. And it is always my pleasure to have him on board because he has a lot of wisdom to share when it comes to the movies, the comics, as well as the collectible side of things. So, welcome once again, Son of Sparda.
Thank you for that esteemed introduction. I don't know about having wisdom, but I'm accompanied by an uncooperative webcam today. We've been trying and there's just no way around it. My webcam doesn't want to show my full complexion today.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. At least you're there, and the main thing is that people get to see not only the glimpse, but more importantly, I mean, like, what are the things that you would like to share with the community that's of their interest, that's of their benefit?
Absolutely. Should we dive right into it? Should we start talking about our experience and all that with the movie?
Yes. First step, what we are going to do is we're just going to talk about almost each and everything that we saw in the movie. And then before we address the pros and cons of the movie, what we are going to do is we are going to discuss a critique which some naysayers have shared with both of us. So we are going to be addressing that as well. And finally, we're going to be sharing the pros and cons of this movie from our perspective.
Yep.
So please, because again, go back to my previous YouTube videos. The gathering was actually organized by Jamil himself, and we had a great time. And I would like you to please take the lead in this one.
Oh, thank you, man. So I'm just going to start off by saying thank you for everyone who joined us. We had a small group of friends and family who came and joined us, and we were a little surprised. Some of the people who came had kids with them.
Yeah.
And we had, to our surprise, we know that movies have ratings. We know that there's a Ministry of Entertainment and they're responsible for overseeing the movies and giving them a rating. So for the years that I've lived abroad, and I know a lot of people have, to our experience, kids are allowed to go into R-rated movies if they are accompanied by an adult.
Cool.
Which baffled me for a very long time. First, I remember going to see Deadpool 1, theater was full, and there were kids there. They had, their parents there, but I just never understood it. So, as shocked as we were, we're still grateful that this law is being enforced, that, people are at the gate saying these kids cannot go in. And I still couldn't understand it until I actually saw the movie from beginning to end. This movie is unapologetically brutal and bloody. And, as much as we wanted these kids to see it, I think it's a good thing that they didn't. There was just too many things going on for them to adhere to with this movie. So with that said, I think it's been a very long time since we've seen, this much hype for a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
People were excited. People were lined up, ready to go in. Dude, and just going back to the age thing, we saw a kid who was 1 year short of being 18. He was a few months actually short of being 18, and he wasn't allowed in. So I guess they'll have to wait for his birthday. But in any case, everyone's dressed up. They had shirts on, Marvel shirts on, all characters. We were pretty excited to go in. Because of this dilemma with everything, I missed the first 15 minutes or so of the movie.
Yes.
So I think because of that, and I'm going to go see it maybe another 2 or 3 more times. I loved it that much. So to that end, I think I have to respectfully ask that you take the lead for a little bit until we catch up to where I got to see the movie, and I'll jump right in. I have to actually take a very quick phone call, but you jump in with the beginning. Tell us about the beginning of the movie, and I'll jump in a little afterwards.
Well, the thing is that the movie started off where the X universe or Fox Studios universe actually had ended, which was primarily with the death of Logan. Was We can endlessly argue that was that the point that for that result that can be considered as the end of the Fox 20th Century Fox universe, or should we be considering other movies like Age of Apocalypse, for example, or the Dark Phoenix saga to consider as the end of the X-Men timeline in the Fox universe? The movie starts from there, and for those who are still a bit unsure that whether they should be taking their kids, as Jamil has said, in Saudi Arabia at least, they strictly enforce this, and there was a very good reason because the movie started out with a lot of blood and gore. It starts out in Earth 10005, which happens to be the timeline where Logan dies. And Deadpool is basically like shown digging up Logan's grave, thinking that his healing factor may have kicked in and he might be alive under the rubble. But turns out that he finds a skeleton because the healing factor of Logan had worn off. And as we saw in the Logan movie, that he was at the end of his life cycle. Lo and behold, the TVA come out of the blue, and it seems like that they have a previous history with Deadpool for some reason, and they are here to apprehend them. Naturally, the merc with the mouth, he is not someone who is known for compliance, and he starts out eliminating the TVA force one by one. The action pretty much reminded me not only in that scene but also later in the fighting scenes that came about. It reminded me of John Woo, the famous action movie director who had directed Van Damme's Hard Target and Mission Impossible 2. So you have that, awesome action moves coupled with slow motion and everything. The action choreography was by far very superior. CGI, of course, Marvel in their movies, they do an awesome job.
Okay,
Now,
that's something.
yeah, please go ahead.
So I think that's when I managed to finally get into the movie.
Exactly.
The scene where he digs up the skeleton
Yeah.
is both hilarious and disturbing at the same time. So we have this corpse of Logan that he digs up, and for a very long time we were looking at the trailers and we were thinking maybe he went to Scovia, and it looks like that scene from the Avengers too.
Yeah.
But no, there's none of that. We'll touch a little bit on the Avengers, but he goes there, and we find out his motives a little later. He desperately needs Wolverine in his universe, to save his universe.
Because he's the anchor point. Wolverine is the anchor point.
Yes, and this is heavily based on stuff from Loki, and he actually drops a Loki line. He says a lot of his is from Loki season 1, episode so and so. I think he said episode 5. But the scene where he glues the Wolverine's dead hand or claws to his own hands and starts fighting with those hands.
Yeah,
it's so hilarious, and at the same time he's like, how do you fight with these things? So it was hilarious to see someone who isn't trained with the claws try and handle them. That was just perfectly, chef's kiss. Whoever thought of that?
Now, Jamil, I want to ask you because you are a bigger superhero movie buff than I am. In fact, I mean, like you also watch like other IPs like Star Wars and stuff. Okay, and then with respect to Marvel and DC, you also keep a track on what's happening in the comic books as well.
Yeah.
Now, how important it is for anyone to having watched Loki season 1 and season 2 before they watch this movie?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say, I mean, the show, as good as it was, and it got way better in season 2, it is not, I don't think it's necessary reading material for you to comprehend this movie or what's going on to catch up on events, it would certainly help. But they tell you this is that, this was featured there. It's like when you're reading a comic book and they have the huge little square on the corner saying this is from so and so, this comic book or this. So
Yeah,
I feel like if you haven't watched Loki seasons 1 and 2, you're fine. You won't get lost. You will still be able to follow the events of the movie. It would slightly elevate your understanding, but it's not a deal breaker. You can still watch this movie and understand what's happening.
okay. As far as I am concerned, because I am very much like the continuity guy because of the comics, Marvel comics that are there. So for guys like me, one of the reasons I remained glued to my seats was because that I had watched Loki season 1 and season 2,
Mhm.
and that helped me tremendously in
Mhm.
understanding what might have happened.
Yeah.
Because there is I only have one critique about this movie, which I'm going to be discussing it later with Jamil at the end of the program.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you find yourself lost in when you're watching this movie, it I highly recommend then you should watch Loki season 1 and season 2 before you end up going there. And also, I'm not asking you to watch every single movie that was produced by 20th Century Fox, but you need to be aware of the productions they had done, like the first batch of the Fantastic Four, as well as the first batch of X-Men movies that were directed by Bryan Singer, and then later on when we came across X-Men First Class and Days of the Future Past and so many things. So you need to be aware that what has happened, and you need to remember one thing, that this is an inter this is basically like a discussion inside the boardroom in Disney Marvel Studios, where what they are saying is that, look, guys, we have a problem. We have some loose ends from our previous projects. We need to harmonize them. We need to bring them into one cinematic universe. That means we might have to kill off some characters. That means we might have to continue with others. How do we do it? How do we present a convincing case to the fans of Marvel Universe, especially Marvel Cinematic Universe? And we take it from there. So now we come across Vanessa as being alive, and which we later learned that Deadpool had actually used Cable's time machine, and he goes back in time way before the event takes place, and then he basically alters the timeline, completely avoids the event, ends up having the life of his dreams, where he's surrounded not only by Big Al, Dipinder, Peter, Shatterstar, and Vanessa.
Like
So
a Sonic thing.
it's like, it's like that House of M moment for Peter Parker, when
Yep.
House of M, Wanda Maximoff basically gives Peter Parker what he always wanted, meaning his Uncle Ben to be alive and him marrying Gwen Stacy and having a family. So
Yep.
this is like that moment. And then comes the TVA.
Oh,
The,
hang on.
yeah.
Can I add something before we get to the TV? So one thing we touched on during our trailer analysis, and it wasn't we were confirmed until we actually watched the movie. Wade and Vanessa are not together in this movie.
Yes.
For a bunch of reasons. She says, your life is too chaotic. I met someone. I might be moving away, which is a little heartbreaking because if you think about it, the first movie it was a bit of a romantic comedy
Yeah.
disguised as a comic book movie.
Yeah.
And it was so heartfelt. And even the second movie was driven by her death, and then at the last second her resurrection. But this movie is still driven by their relationship, even though they're not together. He wants to save his universe for her.
For her, exactly. I'm glad you mentioned that. And I think one of the key things to remember is that you need to be a bit deep when you're watching Deadpool movies. Why am I saying that? Because Deadpool, we need to understand that he's not a joker. Don't be fooled by his jokes and his antics and everything. He is a real case of a mental illness, which is called psychosis, which is basically a person who has had so much pain and trauma in his life. And instead of responding to it with anger or crying or rage or anything, he or she just keeps on acting silly, acting funny to pretend that it's not hurting him from within.
Yeah.
And this is what I really appreciate about Deadpool movies, is the fact that they have captured that essence from the comics.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of movie goers, they simply think that Deadpool is like possibly the adult version of a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, which he is not.
Yeah.
So as we move on, we see that Deadpool gets abducted by the TVA, and we are introduced to Paradox, who is an officer much like Mobius. Mobius is more senior. He is responsible for a certain segment of timelines and stuff. And he has botched his responsibilities for whatever reason. We learn about that later. But he needs Deadpool to come in and save the timeline by rescuing Logan, who is the anchor point of that particular timeline. And to do that, what he says, what he bribes Deadpool is that if you want to save your universe, if you want to save your timeline, you need to bring back Logan, because he is the anchor point. And before that, there is a scene where Deadpool is actually sitting with Happy Hogan in Avengers Tower, and he is basically applying for a job to become an Avengers member. So Paradox basically uses that, and he says, because of course Deadpool gets rejected by Happy. So Paradox uses that, and he says that if you do that, I can get you into the Avengers. Naturally, Deadpool follows. He goes, and that's where the problems start. Because in I think, no, that wasn't 1005. I might be mistaken. The Logan timeline where Logan actually dies. Now, he is under the impression that Logan might be alive under the rubble, but it turns out that he is not alive under the rubble. So he has to hopscotch between multiple timelines and come across multiple variants of Wolverine, some of which were classic comics versions, like the Age of Apocalypse Wolverine, like the famous Mark Silvestri cover with the X Wolverine being tied to it. We also saw Henry Cavill as one of the Wolverines. Now, we don't know if he's going to be continuing, or was this just a spoof. I doubt that, because Ryan Reynolds has, even in the movie, Deadpool is saying that he's going to be playing Wolverine until he's 90.
Can I share my favorite with you?
Please.
So, and this was a little exaggerated, but you know how, not a whole lot of people may know this, but when they first cast Hugh Jackman, there were a lot of complaints. People were like, you hired this 6'4" Australian, to be Wolverine. He's supposed to be 5'2" or something. He's supposed to be shorter. And he was taller than most of his castmates in the first X-Men.
Yeah.
And I think, watch the behind the scenes, you'll see that a lot of people wore stuff to make them taller.
Yeah.
Halle Berry, if you see her in the first X-Men, and then you see her in Days of Future Past, she's not wearing those heels. She's much shorter than Logan.
True.
So the very first variant we see is this insanely short Wolverine. And I think that was just a piece of paint. You want a short Logan? Here he is. So this Logan was actually 4 foot something. He was insanely short. So I think they were
5 foot.
Yes, yeah, he was shorter than anyone would have expected. He was way too short.
Yeah.
So we saw that. The one my favorite. We saw, like I said, the End of Days Logan tied up. We saw also my personal favorite, and I completely forgot to say this during what we were expecting for cameos, is when we saw the brown suit.
Oh, John Byrne brown suit. Oh man.
And that was sort of a hint towards the first time we saw Wolverine in the comics was in the issue of Hulk. There you go. Yep. So in
My
issue of
T-shirt has that brown.
yep,
Brown
there
and
you go.
orange.
There you go. It was an issue of Hulk. That's the first time we saw Wolverine. So we saw a scene of Wolverine versus Hulk. It was a very quick scene, but it was still bittersweet to see that. It was incredible. So that was my favorite scene among all the other cameos.
No doubt.
We saw Patch also, but that was
Patch,
I think
yes.
that was Hugh Jackman. A lot of people were thinking that was the Harry Potter actor. I can't remember his
Daniel
name. Dan-
Radcliffe. I was one of them. I thought it was Daniel Radcliffe also when I saw from the back, but
yeah,
I was proven wrong.
yeah,
I mean, Marvel did a good job.
yeah. So lots of great cameos, and as we go along, we're going to talk about some more.
Yeah. Okay. So now, when the timeline, he finally finds the Wolverine whom he thinks is the right one, can serve as the anchor point. Turns out that Wolverine is suffering from survivor's guilt.
Yeah,
Wolverine in comics usually suffers from survivor's guilt and depression because he survived 2 centuries. He's seen a lot of his friends, family members, loved ones getting killed by people who are his enemies.
yeah,
And in this one, we come across something similar from the Old Man Logan comics.
yeah,
In Old Man Logan, Wolverine finds that his fellow X-Men have been murdered by the Masters of Evil. But in reality, as we proceed in the story, it turns out that Mysterio, because he's the Master of Illusions, he makes all the X-Men look like Masters of Evil. And Wolverine, when he enters the X Mansion, he ends up killing them, only to realize that he has killed all of them. Here, what happens is that it seems that the Sentinels, the Friends of Humanity group, they combine forces and they basically invade the X Mansion and kill every member of the X-Men, while
yeah,
Wolverine, for some reason, which we are not clear on, is not able to go and save them.
yeah.
And he lives with that survivor's guilt. He is in that survivor's guilt when Deadpool actually comes across face to face.
Yeah.
Now,
Oh, well, I should just say the Zoom is saying we have about 10 minutes.
yeah, so let's just do it for 5 more minutes and we do the next segment shortly. So, so as we were saying, that is when things just start to unravel. And when it takes him back to the TVA, the TVA realizes that this is not the Wolverine that's going to be the anchor point for this particular timeline. He has, in effect, botched the operation in its entirety. Next thing you know, the TVA come in with their sticks and they purge both of them. Now, what we saw in the trailers that preceded the movies, what we realized after watching the movie, that was only 1% of the entire flick. And when they purge them, they end up in a place which is called the Void, which is nowhere. And all those individuals, those characters who are lost in time, they end up being there, who don't have who don't have a purpose in the sacred timeline of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They are all there. And when we say they are all there, it's not just Wolverine and Deadpool, but we also come across a lot of characters from Marvel's Fox universe.
Yeah.
Sabretooth, we came across. Toad, we came across. Pyro also. But the biggest surprise was the Human Torch from the first Fantastic Four movie, which was Chris Evans.
Oh, can I
That
add one more?
was, huh?
Can I add one more?
Please.
She didn't have a whole lot of screen time, but I believe you even see her for a very quick glimpse in the trailers. Lady Deathstrike.
Yes, Lady Deathstrike also. Lady Deathstrike was there. Azazel was there from X-Men First Class. Sabretooth from the first X-Men movie. But we had come across Sabretooth in the trailer.
Juggernaut.
Juggernaut had was there, but he also had a good amount of role. He wasn't just there for the screen time.
Yeah.
but Juggernaut was a very important addition in that respect. And next thing you know, what happens is that we finally realize that there is a gang that's reports or serves to Cassandra Nova, and Wolverine knows about Cassandra Nova. Now that's a bit surprising because in the previous X-Men movies, we didn't come across any incident where Charles Xavier and Wolverine are having a discussion about his long lost sister.
Yeah.
But in this movie, we saw that Wolverine would know that she is not only related to Charles, she is actually his sister.
Yeah.
From the moment when she makes an entry, she's sitting on Charles Xavier's chair, but Logan recognizes her. This part, I think, will be explored later. Maybe we might be seeing an E is for Extinction storyline playing out in the future X-Men projects. What do you have to say on that?
I hope so. I mean, you know what? And this is a little jumping the gun a little bit towards the end, but we never got any indication that this is a farewell to the character of Wolverine or the X. I mean, we got a little bit of a farewell or a swan song to the Fox universe.
Yes.
But there's nothing to say that they won't continue on in some form, whether it's this version of Wolverine or another version. So who's to say? Hopefully we'll see her again. They kind of, at least for now, closed the chapter on her. There's a definitive towards the end ending for her. But still, you know, it's comic book movies. No one ever rarely definitely dies, right?
Plus, when you have the TVA, when you have multiple timelines, when you have the void, so the chances of any character making a comeback remains. Okay, so as basically with having void, with having the timelines, with knowing that Loki is now the master of time in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and we saw a rogue agent like Paradox, it means that the jury is out there for a lot of characters, because now we are going to be talking about the second wave of cameos that we came across that were highly unexpected, but it made us realize that Marvel is proceeding in a very systematic, organized way, because they wanted to address their recent past projects, not going all the way back to the 90s and the 80s and the 70s, but at least the projects that they had done in cinema with Blade. So now, as I've mentioned, Blade, which of the cameos surprised you the most when they find a group to fight against Cassandra Nova?
Oh my gosh, man! All of them. They were like the theater we were in exploded with each character that came on screen from this team. So we had Elektra, who we hadn't seen in years. So the original Elektra,
Jennifer Garner.
Jennifer Garner. And I was half hoping we'd see her ex-husband Ben Affleck as Daredevil, but they mentioned that he died.
Yeah,
and I imagine that might have affected his new relationship if he had shown up to work with his ex-wife. I don't know, but we also got for years and years and years we said that Channing Tatum had been trying to make a Gambit movie.
Yeah,
he'd been petitioning to this. He'd been trying. They said we're getting close. At every convention, he'd say we're getting close. We're going to do it. We have a script. It never happened. So I think this was his way to at least say, I got to play Gambit. And oh my gosh, Deadpool made fun of his dialect so many times. He said, who is your dialect coach? And that was hilarious. And then we got Blade and lots of
Wesley
people.
Snipes, Blade. Wesley
Snipes himself. And in another scene, I'm jumping the gun again a little bit, but in another scene, he said, the one and only, and there will never be another. And Deadpool just looks at the screen. Are you sure, buddy? It's coming. Wink, wink. So and then we had X-23, Daphne Geen, the one member of this team who we got confirmation was coming. And I think fan expectations aside, to the story, I think she was the most significant one in this team, because she was the one who Logan of the universe where Deadpool's from. She was the one he died for. He died protecting her and the group of friends she had with her. and she had that incredible line from the trailer where he said, I'm the wrong one, I think.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm the wrong
and
guy.
I'm the wrong guy, and she said, you were always the wrong guy, and I think until you weren't, something like that.
Yes,
Uh,
until you weren't. And it reminded me of House of M story.
yeah,
A similar situation takes place in House of M because the whole House of M facade, which was created by Wanda Maximoff in the comics, who breaks that up actually? Who goes for the rebellion? It was none other than Wolverine.
yeah.
So this was a but here's the thing. I mean, one thing that remains unanswered for me in this regard is why did, like, I can understand, for example, they introduced Channing Tatum, okay, as somebody who is stuck in the void because obviously his project never flew off.
Yeah,
Jennifer Garner, she was part of the Daredevil movie franchise, which didn't fly off, so obviously she's in the void.
yeah,
Wesley Snipes trilogy finished, so
yeah,
he's in the void.
yeah.
How did Daphne Keene X-23 end up in the void? I mean,
I
what
think
was TVA's beef with her?
I thought about that, and it could be just because she couldn't fit into one timeline or another. It may not be the main timeline that Deadpool's from,
Hmm.
even though I think that would have made the most sense.
Hmm.
But we got to give it up for the writers because not only was she there, uh, and she had the glasses that he got her as a kid, it's the
Yeah,
exact same glasses, which
yeah.
is very
So
so.
that's basically the reference that she is the same Daphne Keene from Logan's timeline.
Yeah, yeah. Which is supposedly the same from Deadpool's timeline.
Here's the thing. I mean, this part is I'm a bit confused.
Yeah.
Deadpool's timeline, does it lead to Logan's death or that's something separate?
They say that Logan dies and he dies in the year 2029.
Right.
And that is in the future. And his universe is dying
Hmm.
and it's going to happen slowly. And Paradox doesn't want to wait. He wants to just erase all the timelines that are irrelevant or the ones that are dying. He
Hmm.
wants to go back to, I forget what the terminology is, pruning entire universe or something along
Yeah,
those
pruning,
lines.
pruning. Yeah.
The erasing the universe or pruning the ones that he deems that are irrelevant, like they used to do before Loki took over.
Yeah.
So I think it will happen in the future or at some point. And in the words of Captain Catherine Janeway from Star Trek, time travel is so confusing.
Yes, it
No
is.
one, no one ever gets the hang of it. So we're not sure because this is supposed to happen in the future, and yet the TVA is aware of it. They say that your timeline is going to die because Logan is dead. So it's a little confusing, but we're just going to go with it.
Let's try to sum it up then. Let's try to sum it up from what you and I come across. So
Yeah,
basically, the timeline where Deadpool is celebrating with his close circle of friends, Vanessa is there, but she's not the Vanessa, her girlfriend, her love of
yeah,
her life. He's trying to build up the relationship with her. He
yeah.
is a car salesman with Peter. And this particular timeline, it ends with the death of Logan.
Oh, okay.
And to do that, to save that timeline, basically they need an anchor Wolverine, anchor
Hmm.
Logan.
Yeah,
So he goes out and he gets the best version that can basically serve as an anchor in this particular timeline.
yeah.
And the thing that uh, makes him choose that particular version of Wolverine is the fact that he would be having the sense of purpose because he is already having the survivor's guilt that he wasn't able to save his fellow X-Men from the unexpected calamity that had struck the Xavier mansion.
Yeah.
So this is how it goes into it. Okay, now we've talked about.
Oh, can can I mention something about the cameos?
Please.
Okay, so the Wesley Snipes cameo, as magnificent as it was, and we heard some of us heard rumors about this happening, and a lot of people thought this would never happen because of a dispute while shooting Blade 3.
Yes.
Let's set the record clear. Ryan Reynolds and Wesley Snipes never had any dispute. It was between Wesley Snipes and the director of that movie at the time. But as far as I can tell, throughout the years they've maintained a good relationship. They just went Wesley Snipes was just on stage at Comic-Con, I believe, yesterday, I believe. He was on stage.
They introduced Chris Evans, Wesley Snipes. I'm
Yep.
still trying to catch up with all the footage that's coming across because it's
Yep.
hardly 24 hours. You and I have, I think now it's like a little bit more than 24 hours since we last watched the movie. But yes, you are right on that part.
But he introduces Wesley Snipes. He says, "And my dear friend Wesley Snipes," or along those lines. He says, "My friend Wesley Snipes." So he's trying to tell people, nothing happened between them. They never had a falling out. As far as I read or researched, there was a falling out or there was a dispute on set between Wesley Snipes and the director of Blade 3.
That is confirmed.
Yeah.
But at the same time, knowing that life is pretty unpredictable, it can be a possibility. But there are some human beings who see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And it's not like they are not driven by ego. I think Ryan Reynolds is that type of a person, and he knows how to make peace for the greater.
Yeah.
And frankly speaking, if we remember Deadpool 2, and the scene where he shows Wolverine statue or a figure having the tree coming out of it, and he's like cursing him and everything. I mean, we never expected that there might be a movie coming in where these guys will be starring together.
I mean, they even hint towards it in Deadpool 1. Remember, there was he had the figurine, right? The little Deadpool from X-Men Origins Wolverine figurine. And then towards the end of the movie, he had Hugh Jackman's face stapled on his face when he took off the mask towards the end. So they were hinting that this is something they would love to do. And I think, they've both done several interviews in the last couple of days. And, Hugh Jackman has been asked, "What made you come back?" And he said, "You know what? A few days after I announced my retirement, I saw Deadpool. I saw the first one.
Yeah.
And I said, oops, this isn't, and he didn't say this, but I think in so many words, that was an invitation for him to come back. He said, we want you back. This would be perfect for you. Please come back." So they've been hinting and hinting and hinting, and I think he couldn't resist anymore. And, at some point, they pulled up a huge dump truck full of money and said, "Please come back." And, he just couldn't refuse. I'm sure it was more than the money. It was, doing this movie with his buddy, Ryan Reynolds.
And fan service, of course. I mean, both of these guys, they, I mean, when I was watching this movie, I realized that I think Ryan Reynolds, along with Sean Levy, were pushing back against Bob Iger and his woke brigade at Disney. And they made sure that none of that woke crap made it into the movie. We didn't see any Captain Marvel. We didn't see any She-Hulk. Okay, these ruined projects. If they were part of this movie, then this movie would have become something like Avengers Endgame. Okay, so now just to recap, we had Human Torch, which was originally played by Chris Evans. His future, along with the rest of the Fantastic Four, is done, which gave the impression. Yeah.
Did you notice one little cameo? It's less than a cameo, but did you notice one other member of the Fantastic Four that wasn't in, well, for a split second, and was in one of the movies? Did you notice that?
Which one?
So as they're going back to Cassandra's base, they are riding in the comic book accurate Fantastic Four flying bathtub.
Fantastic car.
Yes. So they had the four on it. It was perfect.
No doubt. So they showed the status that Fantastic Four, which was done by 20th Century Fox, does not exist. They didn't even politely mention the second Fantastic Four, which was done by Fox, that starred Michael B. Jordan. None of that was there. We saw that Wesley Snipes' Blade is in The Void. We saw Jennifer Garner, Elektra, in The Void, Channing Tatum in The Void, and Jamil.
You know who I was half expecting to show up again? So we saw Jon Favreau, famous writer, director, actor,
Happy Hogan.
Happy Hogan.
Yeah.
But he was also known, he's Happy Hogan throughout the MCU, but he was also famously known for directing Iron Man 1 and 2.
Yes.
So he's shown up in the movie. We mentioned that. I was half expecting him to show up as Foggy from Daredevil. Because they already had him in the movie, right?
Yeah.
So why not? Elektra's there. They've met before as Elektra and Foggy. I was half expecting him to show up in the Void as Foggy, but oh well.
But anyways, I mean, like some of these characters, like you mentioned, they mentioned, okay, which characters were killed off according to them. Daredevil died, Punisher died. So Punisher, meaning that the Punisher movie that was done in the early 2000s, that Punisher is no more. So that clears the way for John Bernthal Punisher.
Yeah.
I guess Happy Hogan version of Foggy Nelson is out also. Okay. But can we see Jennifer Garner reprising her role as Elektra, because she looked damn good in that?
Oh, dude, I hope so. She did such a good job in this movie. I feel like we got a taste of what she could do should she come back. But they've already established that we have our Netflix Daredevil and Elektra and Foggy. All those guys are coming back. So as much as I'd love to, realistically speaking, I don't know if it's going to happen. I feel like it was just fan service, and we got to see her one more time, and that was it. She's hopefully, but doubtful at the same time.
Okay, now these cameos were not there for the sake of cameos. I mean, a lot of people are thinking that okay, this movie was banking on just showing cameos. And but these cameos had a purpose, and that purpose was that to bring closure to the past projects that had a very strong fan following, by just saying that okay, all of these projects, all of these actors, all of these characters are now in the void, and they will remain so until something else materializes. But for the time being, when it comes to Blade, Mahershala Ali is going to be leading the Blade franchise. We're going to be seeing, like you said, Charlie Cox star as Daredevil, Vincent D'Onofrio being the Kingpin, and the list goes on and on. One bit is that Cassandra Nova, Emma Corrin, I think she was way too beautiful for the comic book version of the Cassandra Nova. Even being bald, she looked much pretty. But what would you say about her performance as Cassandra?
Oh, she was fantastic. She was truly terrifying. But I got asked, did you see her interview? I believe yesterday night on Jimmy Kimmel, where Jimmy Kimmel's on vacation. So the show was hosted by Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. Did you see that? And they brought Emma Corrin.
You shared the clip with me, but I didn't get to watch it in its entirety. I just the first few minutes. I have to watch that clip.
All right, let me summarize it real quick for your viewers out there. So what happened is it was hilarious from start to finish. But when she came on, she mentioned that she was doing something else, a play or something at the time. And Sean Levy came to see her, and I think she had an allergic reaction or something, and her face was a little messed up. And she said this was not how you want to meet the director of a big project you want to work on. But she said it worked to my advantage, because if you look at Cassandra Nova, she looked just like how I was looking during that little meeting we had. So he saw me and said, "You're hired." Yes, you look just like her. Of course, they brushed her up. She, like you said, she looked fantastic. But oh my goodness, she had a terrifying presence to her.
Yes.
And it's not like from a distance she would read people's minds. She would physically be standing there and stick her fingers inside people's heads. It's a terrifying sight. It looks like something from a horror movie.
Yeah, something from a horror movie. And they even showed those graves when she probes Wolverine's mind. Those graves reminded me of similar ones we saw in Days of the Future Past, not the movie, but the comic.
Yeah. Yep, he's standing in front of the grave. She talks to him, and you know, dude, we at some point we think there's no reasoning with this person, but somehow Logan manages to do it. He manages to talk her down. He mentions Charles and how he's a caring person. And the thing that gets to where he says, if he knew you were here, he would go through heaven and hell to get to you and save you and bring you out. So at that point, for a split second, she just they appeal to her humanity, and she says, "All right, I'm going to help you guys out." And it's not really the type of help where I'm going to help you from start to finish. She's like, "I'm going to help you just this much."
4 seconds.
Yes, for 4 seconds, either take it or leave it. So it's the type of help you're like, "Oh my goodness, is she helping? Is she kidding? Is she teasing us?" So she's just still playing around with them for a little bit.
Exactly, which we learn later in the movie that even her help wasn't without a motive, basically a sinister motive, if you will.
Well, she was betrayed by that guy. What was that guy's name?
Pyro.
Well, not even Pyro. Pyro was a small part of it. The guy who was running that section of the TVA.
Paradox.
Paradox. Yes, thank you. So they had a sort of a mutual agreement, and he broke that agreement. He said, "You do your thing on your end. You leave the void alone." And he broke that agreement because he was afraid of Deadpool Wolverine coming back to ruin things for him because his superiors didn't know what he was doing behind their back.
Okay, now before we move to the next scene, which is going to remain highly debatable amongst fans, she takes out the relic and she mentions that there was a magician who used to walk in the void and he died. Now, was that Wong or was that Doctor Strange? The one who opened the portal.
You know, it could be either one, or it could be because, you know, oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of the place. There's some place where Doctor Strange goes to get his training, and there are a bunch of people who are training in the mystic arts. So it could be Doctor Strange, Wong, or anyone else who didn't fit in that timeline, and they just decided that we need to prune because everyone has one of those things.
Good point, Jamil. You took us back to the first Doctor Strange movie.
And the second, you know, we do go to that place where Wanda attacks them, and there are a bunch of people who are training who help to defend America Chavez.
Yes, exactly. So anyone who would be having the relic, but the best guess would be because Wong had become Sorcerer Supreme. Doctor Strange gets dethroned from the title, and Wong did have that relic with him. That can also be Wong, that can also be Stephen Strange, and as you rightly put it, these guys might be from the training academy, one of them also.
You know who else it might be? And I'm just throwing it out there. Who else who has the relic? Ned. I hope we still get to see Ned.
Yeah, Ned leads because okay.
Oh, no, wait. Did Doctor Strange get it back from him towards the end of No Way Home? Oh.
Now that you mention, I need to watch No Way Home once again just to make sure that he took it away from either MJ or from Ned Leeds. But that's a very good point. Okay, now she opens up the portal for them. They end up in Deadpool's timeline, which is Marvel timeline number 10005.
Yep.
Deadpool is back into the timeline where he was initially shown celebrating with his close circle of friends. The moment they reach there, they are welcomed by the Deadpool Corps. Now, the Deadpool Corps, we saw two members of them in the Void who actually help Deadpool and Wolverine. One is Nicepool and one is Dogpool. But when
is it Nicepool or is it? Well, I guess he did refer to himself as Nicepool. I thought it was Handsome Pool.
No, Nicepool.
Oh.
So Nicepool and Dogpool had welcomed Deadpool and Wolverine, and they helped them. The journey that these guys took reminded me a lot about the comic books that were written by written by Dennis O'Neil and illustrated by Neil Adams for Green Arrow and Green Lantern, because they show that two heroes with opposing views on life join together and they go out on a cross-country journey in America. That's how the differences actually played out between Wolverine. One is Deadpool, who suffers from psychosis, and the other is suffering from survivor's guilt. And some of the scenes where they are lashing out at each other were very hurting.
Yeah.
Now,
And
yeah,
I'm just going to add that there's a point during one of their arguments where Deadpool is speechless, and he said, Logan says to him, "You got nothing to say?" And he just says, I'm gonna fight you now."
yeah.
And it's the darkest we've seen Deadpool. He's like, "Okay, I can't take this anymore."
That's the point. And I think if anyone has to see that conversation again and again, it's exactly
Mhm.
that one where we find Merc of the Mouth losing it completely. Now,
Yeah.
the scene with the Deadpool core,
Mhm.
was it necessary?
Well, I think this was as much as we've seen the both of them lash out. I think this was the time when both characters were finally on the same page together,
Yeah.
and we're going to fight side by side with each other. For we've seen them do that when they fought Cassandra's forces,
Mhm.
but this is the first time where they were unleashed as a unified force, I believe, and they just go at these 100 plus variants of Deadpool. And I think for this scene alone, it justifies not having kids watch the movie. There was, dude, there was so much blood in this one scene where they both go into a bus to fight a bunch of Deadpools,
Yeah.
and the windows are just covered in blood that you can't see inside anymore. And that's not a bad thing. You can let your imagination go wild. But for the longest time, you do see what's going on outside the bus, throughout the bus. And it was hilarious because I think they were under the impression that, much like Nice Pool, these other Deadpools don't regenerate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
No, the other Deadpools do regenerate. Nice pool
they
Deadpool.
do, but they were under the impression that just like
Yeah.
him,
Yeah.
they don't. But dude, and it was such a hilarious way that that guy died. It was just this perfect specimen of a Deadpool, that Nice Pool, and it was just the weirdest thing that he couldn't fight himself, he couldn't defend himself. He was just there for laughs, and then he died. But he was using him as a human shield for the longest time. And after putting all these guys down, he looks at the baby and he's like, "What are you laughing at?" Because I'm just thinking, how are they going to kill this young little baby Deadpool?
Right.
But he's just there to point out that they're all going to get back up.
Yeah, exactly. And
So
then
that was hilarious.
we finally move to the final act,
Yeah.
and we come across this notion that basically like this machine, it has two poles. One is the antimatter, the other is the matter,
Mm.
and they need to be basically like joined in so that they can start eliminating, uh,
The
like you
multiverse.
said, time travel is very confusing.
Yeah.
So basically, they can fix the mess. They can save Deadpool's timeline by
Yeah.
sacrificing themselves,
Yeah.
using the TVA's machines poles
Yeah.
of matter and antimatter together. And the way they try to do that, and next thing you know, they end up succeeding, not only saving the timeline, but they also end up being alive.
Yeah.
My take now is that I think this scene that involved Deadpool core, I wish instead of showing this, they would have, they should have started the movie by showing the agreement between Cassandra Nova and Paradox,
Yeah.
and then they start with Deadpool in Logan's timeline and so forth, so that we basically understood what exactly happened, rather than
Right.
just like when you are approaching the end, you just start to wrap things up
Mm.
pretty fast.
Yeah.
That's something that I think was quite like lacking in this respect.
Okay.
What your take?
I was fine with it. I love that towards when we get to the end of this movie, the characters have actually evolved a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And Deadpool goes from not caring and to genuinely caring about his universe, his fellow friends and family, to also wanting to sacrifice himself to save Logan, who also the polar opposite. doesn't have a purpose. He's like, I've got nothing. I'm gonna sacrifice myself.
Yeah.
So, but at the, we think that, well, that makes sense. But no, Deadpool knocks him out, goes into the chamber, locks the door, and tries to take the machine out himself. To which, he can't do it himself. So Logan, after several attempts, breaks the door down, gets in there, and the only way they can do it is by, joining hands and taking the machine out together. And it was a beautiful scene. Even in that intense scene, we got a little bit of a fourth wall breaking where, Logan's shirtless and Deadpool's like, oh my goodness, look at those abs. Uh, that was hilarious. In the midst of all this chaos that's going on, we have to have a little fourth wall break, but it was perfectly timed. But yeah, it was beautiful. And then Paradox, the higher ups at the TVA show up, and he goes on and on. He has this long speech about how these wonderful heroes died under his supervision, that he was supervising this whole operation to take down Cassandra Nova. And they do the slow walk in, and he goes, "Oh fuck!" So it was nice to see justice served. It was nice to see them both, finally come to an understanding to care about each other and the world they live in, as opposed to Logan saying, "I got nothing
Okay,
to live
now,
for."
before we give our ratings and give the reason behind it, and shed a little bit of light on the pros and cons of the movie, I came across two critiques
Okay.
for those people who gave it a negative ranking, and they said that this movie is just full of cameos. The other bit is that this should not have been a movie. This was more like a filler episode in a TV series. Your take.
Okay, so what was, and to my dismay, because for one thing, I'm a huge fan of the Arrowverse, but the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover episodes that they did a couple of years ago, that was a filler. Well, not even filler. That was a whole lot of cameos with no purpose. Lex Luthor came on. I'm sorry, Tom Welling came on just to say hello, and there were a bunch of cameos just like that. Every single cameo in this served a purpose. Cassandra Nova's forces, most of them familiar faces, even though Juggernaut was not the same actor, but they all served a purpose. They were her minions, her henchmen. Juggernaut, they need to use his helmet. They served a purpose. The people who helped Deadpool and Wolverine in the Void, they served a huge purpose. They were helping them distract the forces so that they can get inside and deal with Cassandra Nova. They even gave Logan the push he needed so that he can go and join them. So there was that. They were able to even help them, storm the fortress so that they can get in. So there was a huge purpose to all these characters. I would say the one that you would say maybe didn't serve a huge purpose, only for them to be there and be the henchmen for our guys to fight, were the Deadpool Corps. They were there for them to fight, for us to see that they were finally on the same page, to fight these guys, to come out united, and they served their purpose. They didn't have a whole lot of lines, and that's okay. Was this the perfect movie? No, but by no means. Was it a fun movie? Yes. It was incredibly fun. There were great cameos who served a purpose. I don't think anyone was wasted. Even Happy Hogan at the beginning was able to tell him off and say, we don't see you as, Avengers material. So everyone served a purpose to an extent. I don't know. What do you think?
Same here, because I did not see this as coming in like unnecessary cameos. Remember She-Hulk?
Yes, yes.
That for me was each and every episode was a filler episode that was simply there to make either fun of our beloved characters or to see them without any purpose. They destroyed the Wrecking Crew. They ruined Matt Murdock, Daredevil.
Even if it was a filler, like for She-Hulk, I don't get the purpose of that show.
Yeah.
There was no beginning, middle, and end. I didn't know that we were heading towards an ending. I didn't know what the ending was going to be. Even when we got to the ending, that served no purpose. But for this, there was a concise beginning, that made sense. There was a middle. Okay, we have to get to this point, and there was an ending that we got to. So everything here made a point. If you think it is a filler, not to argue with you, because art is
Subjective.
it is subjective. It's not like you can put a number on it. It hits every one of us different, so that's okay. If it hit you that way, that's perfectly fine. But send us a message, whether it's in the comments. Tell us how you think this is a filler, because a filler means we're trying to get somewhere, and this is just serving to give us a little bit of an appetizer to something else. So if you think there's something else that they should have got to that they didn't get to, by all means, please explain it to us. We are by no aficionados or experts, but we're a couple of guys who watch movies and enjoy them, and we know what a good movie is for the most part. And we thought this was a great movie that we enjoyed. If you didn't enjoy it, that's fine. Hopefully you'll enjoy the next one. We're not saying you should enjoy this one. Each movie hits us differently. So it's fine, and hopefully you'll enjoy the next one.
Before we hit to our rankings and our pros and cons, one thing, how true was it with the original source material?
Dude, I don't think we saw anyone who was unfaithful to their character. Everyone stuck by it. Even the characters who were just there for a little bit, like the Deadpool core, Headpool and Dogpool and Nicepool and Lady and Deadpool. I'll touch on that for a little bit. Lady Deadpool, we had our speculations about who she might be. Was it Blake Lively? Was it, for the longest time we thought it might be Taylor Swift. So apparently it was just the voice of Blake Lively. She voiced the character, and there was another actor who was playing the role. So that was still technically, we'll say it was, to some extent, it was Blake Lively. So they were all fun cameos. They were true to their characters. I think, Hugh Jackman gave a very true performance in Logan, and this is an extension of that. Right. I don't think anyone, all the fanboys back in the day who said Hugh Jackman would not be a good Wolverine, I think they're eating their words right now, years and years later. Anyone who I don't know for what reason you would think Ryan Reynolds wasn't a great Deadpool. I think he is the perfect embodiment of Deadpool. He's been fighting for this for years and years, even after he played that role in X-Men Origins Wolverine. He thought, nope, I'm going to do this role justice. And he came back and he did it justice, not once, but twice, but 3 times he came back and did the role justice. So we were incredibly fortunate, I feel, to have got this movie and these characters and these actors come back and join in and make this the movie that it was. So that's my opinion. Well, what do you think?
Same here. I mean, like when I was watching the movie, I was pretty like I was having this anxiety, if you will, that maybe so many cameos are going to be there, and this movie might turn out to be cameos for the sake of cameos. But as the movie progressed, as the story moved on, and like you said, there's a start, there's the middle, there's the ending, there's everything is justified in the story. But the most important bit, that the acid test for me, is that when I'm watching any superhero movie, am I looking at the character I grew up reading comics of? Mm-hmm. So to answer the question simply, yes. And this movie is because again, it's like slightly apples and oranges thing, because She-Hulk is a TV series. That's not my She-Hulk. That's not the She-Hulk I grew up with. That's not the Wrecking Crew I grew up with. That's not the Sakaar I know from the comics. Okay. So just to illustrate the point. And of course, even you want to compare movies? Carol Danvers, aka Brie Larson. Yep. That's not my Carol Danvers. That's some feminist icon being shoved down our throats. Paul Rudd Scott Lang is not my Scott Lang that I grew up reading. Okay, here I didn't have that complaint. Last but very important bit. What is your ranking out of 10 for this movie?
So the only reason I want to take out 1 point, I'm going to give it a 9. The only reason is because the stuff, the technicalities with the timeline and all that, uh, if you want to nitpick, I feel like that's where we get a little lost.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna give it between an 8.5 to a 9. I felt like, to me, the one thing that matters to me is that you enjoy the movie and it makes sense. And for the most part, I enjoyed it and it made sense for the most part.
For the
It
most
wasn't
part.
100%, wasn't rocket science. We didn't, there are some things that went over our heads, which is fine as long as we enjoyed it. As long as for the most part it makes sense. It doesn't have to be exact 2 + 2 = 4. It was fine. We understood it for the most part. It makes sense. We enjoyed it. So I'm gonna give it a 9.
Nice, nice. Okay, and you did mention a little bit of the con or the critique. Is there any other point that you have to mention, that what other bit was missing in the movie?
Um, and this is just my own personal nitpick, just because I'm so invested in the relationship between Wade and Vanessa. I
Mhm.
was hoping to get back together. I'm I was hoping at some point we'd see them, whoever Vanessa's with, he would get lost in the timeline, and she'd say, "Oh wait, I don't know why we broke up. Let's get back together." Um, I was hoping that would have been the perfect ending for me, because again, he was driven by his love for her. Even though they're not together, he wants to save the universe for her.
True.
So I was kind of hoping that would happen. But that's my one nitpick. I feel like, they did this beautiful movie where, we got to see a lot of cameos, a lot of fun things happen, and I feel like we couldn't ask for anything more. I don't know what people are upset about, and could be rightfully upset. We are not by any means the most experts when it comes to making movies.
True.
So if there's a better way of doing this, then great. But we are perfectly satisfied. I mean, I speak for myself. I'm perfectly satisfied with this movie.
Great, great,
Mm.
great, 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 great. I would give it an 8.5.
Oh,
And the reason behind that is that if I stack up the rankings for all the Marvel Cinematic productions,
yeah.
MCU productions, I would, because for me right now, nobody has topped Avengers Infinity War,
Mhm.
because that, in my opinion, is the most complete movie ever.
Mhm.
Uh, I would put this movie point one above Avengers Endgame. And the reason behind that is that Avengers Endgame could have been better than Infinity War, but
Mhm.
because they kept on forcing down unnecessary, unjustified puns in the movie, that
Mhm.
watered down the movie tremendously, even though it could have been a masterpiece. So for me, Endgame is an 8.4. 8.5 is Deadpool and Wolverine, but there are many movies that are above these two, namely, like, for example, Captain America, The Winter Soldier is a much better movie. Iron Man 1 I would put it on top of it. Uh, any other movie that I am forgetting, like Logan again, is going to remain above these now that the all the universes have combined. But 9.78 is my ranking for Avengers Infinity War, and I would give it 8.5. My critique for giving it 8.5 is that they needed to they needed to show
Mhm.
a little bit more detail about the relationship between Cassandra Nova and the TVA.
Mhm.
So, as I said earlier, I mean, if the movie had started basically with a scene where we come across, it can be a 15 to 20 minute scene, which shows that why Paradox is approaching Cassandra Nova. How did Cassandra Nova ended up in the void? Small bits of references are good enough, but
Mhm.
at least, basically, like, it would deepen the plot further.
Mhm.
That for me is the only bit that brings this movie down. However, amongst the Deadpool movies, Deadpool 1, 2, and 3, I think this remains my favorite, because for fixing up the MCU timeline, the team up with Wolverine, the cameos being justified, the story. Uh, it's if you know and understand the characters from comics, if you know their background to the character, this is a very good movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will say they do mention that she was brought there as an infant, right, to the void because she was too chaotic. They couldn't control her, and they decided as a baby they had put her in the void. So I don't know if that explains it or not, but yeah, maybe a
Was
little
that
bit.
the TVA who brought her to the void? Because
Yeah.
she tried to strangle an infant Xavier with her
Yeah.
mother's umbilical cord.
Yeah.
So, and that exactly falls in, not exactly, but to a great extent falls in line with the story that was established in comics. So,
Yeah.
anyways, this brings us to the end of our spoiler review.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
sure, yeah, please.
let me ask you real quick. How would you rank this among the Deadpool movies, the three now Deadpool movies?
As I said, I mean, for me, the reason it's the best Deadpool movie is because of fixing the MCU timelines and the justified cameos. Even though Deadpool 2 was my favorite because of Cable,
No?
and it's a very good story, everything.
Mhm.
But now, because he's teamed up with Wolverine and they
Mhm.
have this journey.
Yep.
And of course, we forgot to talk about one very important thing:
That's it.
Deadpool and Thor.
Oh, that's right. That's right. There was a scene while Deadpool was in the TVA, while Deadpool's on his back and Thor's right up on top of him flying. And everyone on the TV was like, "You can't see that yet. Put it away." So maybe it's a tease for something to come. Sometimes, in movies in general, not just the MCU, but they like to sprinkle little things, nuggets of things that may happen or may just be for fun.
Yeah,
So at this point, we have no confirmation whether this is something coming in the future or it was just something to tickle us and say, hey, this might happen.
it might. So good point you mentioned that. You remember
Yeah.
Nick Fury's eye patch?
Yeah.
He said that I had trusted someone, and because of trusting someone with a lot, I ended up having the injury, and that's why I cover my eye. Next thing you know, in Captain Marvel movie, it turns out that Goose the cat had scratched his eye. What a
Yeah.
pathetic, what a pathetic justification that was.
Yeah.
So, but I think Disney has learned their lesson. I hope so, because Bob Iger survived a coup. He and his CFO were about to get fired by Nelson. I forgot the name of the Nelson Pelt, I think, and
Mhm.
Ike Perlmutter, because they have two seats on the board,
Yeah.
and they had some investors. Plus, at the
Yeah.
same time, I mean, the only good thing that has come out after No Way Home, Doctor Strange No Way Home was a modest success.
Yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was the only big success.
Yeah.
Every other bit was a flop.
Yeah.
So hopefully they're not going to be doing such mistakes. We have reached our conclusion of this spoiler review. I would like to thank Son of Sparda, Jamil Bakhsh, for joining in. And as always, sharing his enthusiasm, his pearls of wisdom when it comes to analyzing the movies and the trailers and every other bit of our favorite superheroes. I'm not going to be taking more of your time. Here's the giveaway from Jamil. Can you show it again to the audience, Jamil?
Oh, it's not a giveaway. This is my own personal thing.
Go on, show it, man.
It's just masked.
Still, man, it's an amazing mask.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, your buddy had a way better mask. We want to ask him where he got it because that was movie quality there.
Well, I'm sure next time we meet, we're going to ask him, well, where did he get the mask? But thank you once again for joining in. And for our viewers, please, if you found anything interesting you want to talk about, please share your comments, share your questions, and we'll definitely get back to you. Thank you so much to all of you for watching. Thank you once again, Jamil, for being there for the community.
Oh, we got to end it with the famous line people use: like, comment, share, and subscribe.
Oh, yeah, don't forget to like, comment, share this video, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.
Excelsior!
Excelsior. Stay blessed, brother.